Hey guys, Dov here with a news update for Total War Warhammer 3, at least potentially. The real news is for Warhammer the Old World, the revival of the classic Warhammer Fantasy tabletop game from Games Workshop themselves. As a part of the new game's release, it looks like KISLEV is going to be fully fleshed out, which I find the timing very interesting on this. Considering that KISLEV is going to most likely be front and center in Total War Warhammer 3, there's no confirmation on that, certainly. This is more evidence to suggest that perhaps there's a parallel development of KISLEV with Games Workshop and Creative Assembly working together, probably obviously with Games Workshop in the creative lead in terms of the actual development, but potentially developing units to kind of have a sort of cohesive release of KISLEV. Now, KISLEV did have a release of some limited units in 6th edition in a sort of supplement book. We'll go over that in just a second here, but in this blog post on warhammer-community.com, they detail a new potential unit for KISLEV, at least one that's coming to the tabletop confirmed. Now again, does this confirm KISLEV for Total War Warhammer 3? Now, no, not necessarily, but again, being that Total War Warhammer 3 is going to be lacking in quote-unquote good guy order factions, and in terms of the marketability, I do think that Creative Assembly and Games Workshop would want to include some order factions in that game. KISLEV, obviously, makes the most sense geographically, they're right there, and this is more evidence to suggest that perhaps KISLEV will be released with some new units, some new lore potentially. So let's take a look at this new unit. The new unit in the early stages of development is the Ice Guard. They are essentially elite warrior women protecting the Ice Queen Caterine, equally skilled with bow and blade. They can access the elemental magic of their realm in a similar manner to their Ice Queen. Now, what exactly that will mean for the tabletop, I'm not sure. I don't know exactly what they're planning for the ice magic, but I would imagine that they will perhaps be able to cast certain spells. For me, the unit's design, and I'll be displaying a picture on screen now as well, the concept art that they've released for this, which by the way looks absolutely amazing. I love the sort of Slavic-inspired shields and artwork. The armor looks amazing. Slavic warrior women, you know, kind of badass Slavic warrior women is something that is sort of historical and realistic as well. I mean, that's something that we've seen even in our own history, so very cool. The blade and bow, for me, says that they'll probably be a unit similar in function and style to something like Sisters of Avalorn, sort of an elite archer unit that also has pretty good stats, can hang around in melee in the late game, and especially has good defensive stats. Probably only medium armor, judging medium to heavy armor, judging from the concept art here. But yeah, how will they fit into the roster exactly? Well, I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about some of the units from that official army book, because I know there's a lot of misconception about what is and is not officially from Games Workshop. And I mean, obviously this shows we could potentially be seeing quite a few new units, at least for the tabletop. And again, whether or not that will translate into Total War Warhammer remains to be seen, or if KISLEV will even be a playable faction. I can't imagine that they won't be. But here's to hoping. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about some of the official units from that 6th edition supplement. First up, we talked a little bit about her already. Caterine, the Ice Queen, Tsarina of KISLEV. She uses ice magic. Likely, if KISLEV were to be released, that would be a brand new lore of magic. Yeah, she's a legendary ice caster, would probably be the faction leader as well. A very, very powerful mage. Ice magic, I don't have a lot of information here to speculate about what exactly that would look like, other than it would be a new lore of magic potentially, but very, very cool to have another legendary caster. Now, you'll often hear about KISLEV having bear cavalry, and now I want to clear up that misconception real quick. There's no actual unit of bear cavalry anywhere in this, even in some of the other supplementary materials outside of this 6th edition army book. There are no bear cavalry. However, Tsar Boris Ursus does ride a bear called Erskine. He is another potential legendary lord, kind of the fighter. He is a past Tsar of KISLEV, so being that this is kind of contemporaneous, most likely with Caterine the Ice Queen, they could just make him kind of the second in command, maybe just a high-ranking noble, potentially. Historically, he was a Tsar of KISLEV, though. This is where the sort of bear riding comes from. Now, I would imagine they could extrapolate this out, and especially if they're making this for Total War Warhammer, the fact that they have to make the skeletons and animations, I would imagine that we'd probably see a unit of bear cavalry, but I just want to make sure you guys know that is not an official thing. There is a legendary lord, though, that does ride a bear, so it could be a thing. In terms of regular units, they've got Kossars, who are hybrid axe and bow unit, which would be pretty interesting. I'd be curious to see exactly how that would work in Total War Warhammer, whether they would make two variants, kind of one melee and one missile variant, or have it be more like a Lothern Sea Guard, where they kind of operate in melee and at range pretty decently. Now, obviously, they wouldn't have anti-large or charge defense because they don't have spears, but maybe they would give them armor-piercing damage, potentially, if they have, you know, two-handed axes, or at the very least, just good melee stats, something like, I don't know, maybe like an Orc Air Boy could be potentially pretty interesting. Leading them is sort of their, I don't know if this would be necessarily a generic lord or a hero of some kind, but boyars are kind of mid-ranking nobles in KISLEV. There's another model that could potentially be better as captain, so I think this guy might end up being a lord. Ungol horse archers are a lot like they would sound like. Horse archers based on kind of the steppe peoples of our own history. Lightning fast, very skilled with a bow, but a little bit lacking in leadership and discipline. Probably be the cheapest, lightest, fastest variant of cavalry for KISLEV. The Winged Lancers, probably one of their most famous units, and certainly an iconic one, again, sort of sourced through our own history. These guys, I would imagine, would be sort of a medium armor shock cavalry with very high charge bonus. For me, I picture them at least with charge bonus of like 80 to 90, and you can see from the picture on screen now, they don't have a whole lot of armor on their horses. So definitely a medium armor, I think, would kind of make sense for them. Something in the range of like 50 to 70 armor. Massive charge bonus, but pretty squishy at the end of the day. I mean, 50 armor is definitely not a lot. The Griffon Legion, now this is an interesting one. This is one they could implement in a couple of different ways. I could see this being a regiment of renown of the Winged Lancer, or potentially they could just have it as a slightly better, more expensive variant that's more limited, perhaps. It's tough to say. If they really want to give KISLEV a full cavalry focus, I would say this should be a unit that you can take multiples of as just sort of a slightly upgraded, a little bit heavier, a little bit better, a little bit more expensive version of the Winged Lancers, and then kind of as the true elite, we would then slot in the mythical, non-official, as of this moment, bear cavalry. I think that not necessarily give them an equal of the Empire, like Empire Knights, you know, Reichsguard Knights of the Blazing Sun. Demigryphs, like it wouldn't be exactly like the same progression, but sort of a similar-ish progression in terms of their cavalry. Could be very, very cool. Now, I do want to talk about a few units as well that come from Mordheim. Now, these units were not in that 6th edition army book, but I guess they are released from official Games Workshop sources, so they are things that Creative Assembly potentially could pull from. First is the Streltsy. They're a type of elite infantry in the KISLEV military. They use guns and halberds. Now, how these guys would slot in with the Ice Guards and the Kossars, I'm not sure. Maybe the Kossars would be the lowest, these guys would be the middle, and the Ice Guards would be the highest. But again, kind of another hybrid missile and melee unit. Would they implement them like that, or would they rather split them up and have like a gun variant and a halberd variant? It's hard to say, but certainly the combination of halberd and gun would be quite powerful. I mean, you look at something like the Black Spot Regiment of Renown for the Vampire Coast, sort of functions in a similar manner, and it's a very, very strong unit. Another one from Mordheim is Trained Bears. I believe this was also in their War Master roster. Yeah, again, the bear cav thing is not official, but Trained Bears, yes. So certainly we could see a unit that would maybe function like the pig herds for the beastmen, but instead is a bunch of bears. That would be terrifying and awesome. Super, super cool. Of course, the bear cavalry are a possibility, though again, I want to emphasize for like the 5th time, not official. Bears, I'm sure, will feature heavily in KISLEV on some level. At the very least, they have Trained Bears and that legendary lord. And the last one, this is again from Mordheim, is the Druzina, and he's kind of a lower ranking noble, which is why I think maybe the Boyar would be a Lord level character and the Druzina would be a hero level character, kind of like the Captain. It could be potentially a missile melee hybrid character. Hard to say, but certainly from what I've gathered looking at all of these units is two things. Number one, KISLEV infantry. I mean, I'd imagine that they'll have some melee-only infantry, but it looks like a lot of their stuff is leaning into missile melee hybrid, which I think would be really interesting if they had almost no, dedicated melee infantry and it was almost all hybrid. Likewise, their cavalry focus, obviously with the winged lancers and the Ungls and everything, is going to be very prominent, so I'm curious to see exactly how they go with that. Obviously, they'll be less heavily armored than something like Empire or even Bretonnia, I would think, but I'm very, very curious to see if, again, they're implemented, which I think this is strong indications that they will be, and that potentially Creative Assembly, Games Workshop could be working together again on their roster. Let's all keep our fingers crossed and hope that this is, in fact, what it looks like. Because, again, this is all just speculation at this point. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.